This 12th installment of the Q&NE expansion update series will be the last one. And you'll see why, because basically we're now down to starting scenery and building details. It's not really an expansion series anymore. It's just, finishing off layout details from here on. So we will be going through today resetting the staging yards, the train consists. Now that we have another staging yard, we'll be looking into some initial scenery. We'll be painting the layout, I guess, giving it a foundation color and starting to paint the ties and rails. And we'll also get into kitbashing some of the buildings. So here's a look at where we were at our last video. Basically all the track was in, it's all been wired up, backdrop is in, but still looking pretty sparse. And here we are now, where we're moving along quite quickly, getting buildings into their final position, starting some scenery. So going forward, it's not really an expansion story. It's a layout development or detail development as we start operating the layout. With 4 new staging tracks to fill, it was necessary to, I guess, redistribute all the cars and staging that were in the east and west yard to spread out over 13 tracks now, east, west, and north. And that meant pulling all the trains out of staging and redistributing. So I ran my Excel macro-based switch list and train consist generator and tracker a few hundred times, actually, kind of like a Monte Carlo simulation, to redistribute all the cars to all the existing industrial spots, the new industrial spots, and the new staging tracks. This was partly to make sure that the operating plan would achieve a steady state and not blow up with yards getting overflowed or industries getting too many cars. So once that was done, I printed out a set of pages that dictated what each train consist would be in each of the staging tracks and where cars would be at the industry for the restart of operating sessions on the Q&NE. What this meant was that I had to bring all 9 staged trains from the staging yards onto the layout so I can rearrange all the cars according to the outputs from the simulation. So that meant having 400 plus cars on the layout and searching out and finding the right car numbers and reassembling train consists to put them back in the correct tracks. So what you're seeing here is something that, of course, you don't see during operating sessions, but almost every visible track jam-packed with cars that were in the staging yards, just so I can hunt down and find the right car and the right car number to reassemble the trains that need to go back into staging. So I even had to spill out over into the new section of the layout. You can see here some of the cars already being located onto their sidings, but as well, the main line was full of cars because I didn't have enough room to have all 400 cars out on the layout, so I was spilling over to the new section. Here are a few more still photos of some of the very crowded locations on the layout as I was going through this process. Main lines were full, yards were full. But eventually, one by one, trains got reassembled and put back into their staging tracks under the layout. The last step in this process was to fill up the north staging tracks, which is representing Montreal. And so what you're seeing here is the inaugural run of a semi-revenue service movement into the new staging yard. All 4 tracks in the staging yard helix are long enough to hold probably 40 cars each or close to it. So these train lengths will have no problem at all. Typically the Q&NE will be about 28 to 32 cars long. This is the view through the opening in the fascia that I created. So there's no issue with monitoring how the trains are proceeding around the helix and making sure that they don't pass the clearance points at the bottom end. And here's just a couple of views of all 4 trains now tucked away in the 4 staging track helix. The first track or track closest to you is the departure track, so there are actually 5 tracks on the helix, but that one is kept clear for trains making their way out of staging back onto the railroad. Just a quick diversion here. As I was taking cars out of staging, I noticed that this Walters piggyback flat had an incredible warp on both ends of the car. I disassembled it, took a look at the frame, and tried to bend it back, but the frame cracked. I was still able to put it back together, and it still holds together, but there's no way to actually straighten it out. And you can see the effect it has on the coupler heights. So I typically leave it as the last train in my intermodal consist in case it uncouples. It's a real oddity. Just wondering if anyone else has experienced a similar situation with this car. Leave a note in the comments if you have, and what you've done to fix it if you were able to. There are 2 tunnel portals today on the existing Q&NE, one in a mountainous rock cut and the other in more of an urban setting. And so for this 3rd tunnel portal on the new section, I wanted like a combination of the 2. At least that's how it's working out to be needed. Bit of a rock cut, but also in an urban area. And so what's important is to make sure that the tunnel portal itself doesn't sit up high in the urban area, much like we have here on the existing layout. It's rather low profile. I had picked up a nice single track concrete portal the last show I was at. I think it's hydrocal based. It didn't have a manufacturer's name on it, but as you can see from this photo, it sits much too high on the backside to blend in with the surrounding scenery that will be there. So I knew I had to do some trimming. I just wasn't sure whether it could be easily done with a hydrocal material. Turns out it was possible. It was just a question then of deciding whether to trim some from the bottom or trim from the top, and how would you do that and still keep a tunnel portal looking like a tunnel portal. So the solution was to take some off the bottom, as I said, and remove the top slab carefully to keep it from breaking, and then trim off a piece below the top slab, and then reinstall or glue back together the top slab overall with a lower profile next to the layout. The trimming of the bottom of the portal was limited to just enough so that I maintained sufficient clearance for the cars going through the portal, and that meant matching the underside of the plywood behind it. And yes, I know the portal is not centered over the track. This was just a test shot just to make sure the height was correct. I didn't originally plan on starting scenery at this stage of the layout construction, but I figured I needed to install something quickly just to prevent anything from rolling down in between the levels of the layout here, especially once I restarted operations. So I had all these rolls of craft paper handy from when I did the original planning for the layout, and I thought, oh, I'll just quickly create a view block or something to temporarily prevent anything from rolling down in between the levels of the layout. But it quickly dawned on me that, hey, why don't I just use this method to create a baseline for the rock cut that's going to run the entire length through this area. And so that's what I did. Well, you know how it goes. One thing leads to another, and I thought, well, I'm putting this brown craft paper down, and it kind of sticks out against this bright white plywood base. Why don't I give the plywood a base coat of tan or brown or whatever I have in leftover paint in the workshop, and that'll kind of blend it all together. So I did that. And then I got to looking at it and thinking, well, I've got one side of the rock cut done. I probably should do the other side because it looks kind of awkward. So before you know it, you're into doing a lot of scenery long before you thought you would. It was a little different on the other side, of course, because it's against the fascia and it needs something self-supporting. So I got into cutting up cardboard strips and a bit of foam to kind of shape the other side of the rock cut. Not done yet, but gives you an idea of where it's going to end up. After starting the rock cut, I quickly realized I better not box myself in too quickly because I still have to paint the ties and the sides of the rails. So I broke out my old Floquil markers for rail tie brown and rail brown and started to paint. Of course, this led me further down the rabbit hole into details that I didn't think I was going to get into yet because everywhere there's a track joint, there are ties missing because they were cut off to make sure you could insert the track joiners. So those had to be inserted, trimmed and inserted before painting could begin. The whole point of painting the ties and rail, at least a base coat, before weathering, if you're interested in that, is to get rid of the shine, both on the plastic ties, which are naturally shiny as plastic, and the sides of the rail being nickel silver, which is nothing like the prototype, of course. It also allows you to camouflage the soldering points for the electrical feeds. Now, the Floquil felt tip pens were actually a really neat idea and an efficient design, particularly for painting the ties. But when it comes to painting the sides of the rail, the felt tip would quickly wear away running back and forth over the spike heads. And so while I had a little bit of juice left in those from, I'm surprised it actually lasted this long from the original layout, I had to find an alternative because the felt was really wearing away too much and you couldn't get in there to the side of the rails. So I found a comparable color, actually I think it's a better color for the rail sides. It's rail brown from Badger, and using a micro brush, it's fairly easy to run along the sides of the rail and get them painted. And here you see with these before and after shots the dramatic difference painting the rails and ties can make. This is going to be a bit of a story. When I first designed the layout or the track plan, I had envisaged using the Walters boiler house as a boiler house, which is typically where the recostification process takes place in concert with milk line that's brought in and covered hoppers to take the outflow of the pulping process. These liquids are called black liquor, and to turn them back into green liquor or something that can be used once again at the start of the process. So it's a recycling effort. It also generated outbound products that were useful in other industries. So there was an opportunity here for outbound tank car loading. So the Walters boiler house kit used to be part of the original paper mill kit. Not the one pictured here, but the one that included the pulp mill tanks and the boiler house and the warehouse. Walters got smart and eventually broke them up into separate kits, although you can't really find the pulp tanks anywhere anymore. You also can't find the pulp mill building, which is something else entirely that I'd like to try and find. I'm going to have to kitbash that one, I think. In any case, what happened was, Walters is smart in how they put their sprues together. They don't want to waste anything. So when they created these separate kits, they didn't they wanted to reuse the sprues they had. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that they needed for the warehouse building, included those little tanks you see in the photo, were on the same sprue that had a portion of the boiler house walls. So this wall is in fact an extra piece that you get in the warehouse building kit. A useful extra part for future kit bashing projects. So while I was busy scouring the internet for the pulp tanks, I came across the new Lakefront Energy Power Plant kit from Walters, which, as you can see, uses exactly the same sprue parts as the boiler house kit, which I hadn't bought yet. And I thought, well, maybe I can use that. And it had a lot of other interesting bits and pieces. So I purchased that. And then by chance, I happened to come across one of the original warehouse and mill kits from Walters on Facebook Marketplace. And so I grabbed that real quick and instantly had the pulp tanks and the boiler house, as well as a third warehouse kit. As I didn't need a third warehouse kit, I split the cost of this find on Marketplace with a friend, and he took the warehouse parts and I kept the boiler house and pulp tanks. This meant keeping the entire power plant kit intact. As you can see on the layout, I did rearrange it to make it more compact. Rather than linear, it's more of an L shape now. And it's far enough away from where the boiler house is going to be, and it'll be hidden from view by the pulp mill that I'm going to have to scratch build unless I find the Walters kit, so they won't immediately be visible in the same view. So what does all this have to do with scratch building? Well, with these extra parts, I thought perhaps rather than having a separate loadout facility building next to the boiler house, as shown on my drawings, I could use these parts, these extra parts, to extend the footprint of the building, since it's all the same corrugated metal siding building material. Just extend it to a larger building that includes the boiler house and the tank car loadout. I experimented with various different layout arrangements after having cut up the extra building wall into various chunks that I thought were useful, and played around with it, different arrangements, finally settling on one that uses the front side of the original boiler house kit as a sidewall, and then using one of the cut-up pieces to create a new entrance or doorway for the tank car to run inside. Once that decision had been reached, it was just a matter of filling in any remaining gaps in the walls with the remaining leftover bits of the original wall that had been cut up. This is all that's left from the original wall sheet. Not to be thrown away. You never know when you'll need another section for another kit bashing project. So here are some views of the semi-completed superstructure. All the joint lines have been sanded smooth and or glued. The roof's not on yet. Also some trim along the top of the walls need to be added. I'm now thinking of potential locations for tanks, external tanks, either the back of the building or the front of the building, as you see here. I also have left the closest sidewall unglued. You can see it's being held together by masking tape. That's because I'm still debating whether to add another man door and perhaps a small roll-up garage door for some vehicle access, or maybe even just for rolling out dumpster bin. So that's a detail TBD. So overall, I'm pleased with the progress to date. It hasn't quite been a year yet. I think that'll be in June or July that I've been working on this. So not bad progress-wise. A couple of other details that I neglected to mention. One here is the bumper posts. I've got some from our friends at Pico on order, but in the meantime, I've just inserted some sponge blocks to stop cars from rolling off the ends of the tracks. And I've also got this water tower that's going to be strategically placed behind the boiler house, yet to be assembled. So there you have it. Going forward, I expect to still try and have monthly updates. They may be related to details I'm adding to the layout as it progresses. It may be mixed in with some switching videos. I know we haven't done proper switching videos for a year now, so we may get back into that somewhat as operating sessions will be resuming this Sunday. Stay tuned. More to come. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoy layout improvement videos, here are a few others that you may find interesting. If you're not already a subscriber, you can click on the logo on the top right-hand corner of your screen.